just gonna go ahead and jump into it, Jody. Okay. Every 5 years, the federal acquisition regulation requires an adjustment of statutory acquisition-related thresholds for inflation. The last time this was done was 2018. FTA, Federal Transit Administration, adjusted the threshold for micro purchases in simplified acquisition purchases, or what we call small purchases. Those thresholds have increased from 3,500 to 10,000 for micro purchases and 150,000 to 250,000 for small purchases. Those thresholds dictate how we are able to acquire goods and services. And the FTA does not allow its grantees, however, to simply change their procedures in alignment with new federal regulation without first modifying its procurement manual. Right now, our current micro purchases threshold is 3,500 and 150,000 for small purchases. And you can go ahead and thank you. Micro purchases can be awarded without soliciting competition. We simply need to make a determination that the price quoted is fair and reasonable and document the procurement file accordingly. For small purchases, quotes must be obtained from at least 2 sources and documented in our procurement files. For purchases over the simplified acquisition threshold, which for us currently is 150,000, but if the board so chooses to increase those thresholds, it would be 250,000, and a formal solicitation process would need to be conducted. Increasing the thresholds would give GRTC staff the ability to follow best practices and improve efficiency in our procurement process. FTA has also changed when it's necessary to develop an independent cost estimate and perform either a price or cost analysis. Currently, GRTC develops an ICE, an independent cost estimate, prior to the receipt of quotes and performs a formal cost or price analysis to determine if a price quoted is fair and reasonable for every acquisition in excess of our, right now, our micro purchase threshold, which is 3,500. These tasks are cumbersome. And while FTA still requires a fair and reasonable determination to be made for all purchases, it does not require that formal ICE or cost or price analysis to be performed for purchases up to that simplified acquisition threshold. So our recommendation is to increase the micro purchases threshold to $10,000 and the simplified acquisition threshold to $250,000. Discontinue the development of a formal cost estimate and the performance of a cost or price analysis, which aligns us with our federal regulation, and it will also improve our efficiency. Just want to let you know that these changes would not affect our approval process. So the board would still see procurements and need to approve, the board chair would need to approve procurements up from 50,000 to 100,000. And you all would still see procurements, and we would still make our recommendation for awards for anything over 100,000. Are there any questions?
I'll just jump in and say I think it sounds reasonable. Increasing efficiency lines pretty closely with what I think many of our localities set as our, I think we all use different names for it, but the small purchase threshold at 10,000 and the need to go out for true RFP bids at greater than 250 seems consistent and certainly increases, you know, it's the best use of staff's time.
Yes, it is.
It's much better. Is this something we would need to make a motion to suggest to the full board, or?
Yes.
Okay. I don't want to stifle the conversation, but at the time, I'm glad to make that motion.
Andre?
I'll second that. And if I could add a comment after my second with the motion. Yeah, I think inflation and the costs increasing right now are a key driver of some of these improvements, as well as the efficiencies of staff. I think, you know, a lot of things are in a place of needing to be more efficient. And I think the longer we have paperwork and procedures that can be simplified in the way, the better we can operate as a organization meeting the needs of our constituents. So I'm all for it.
Any more discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we make the recommendation to the full board to adopt these amended thresholds.
And I think you already had a second, so.
Yep.
Favor? Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Thank you for your time.
Absolutely, thank you.
Good stuff.
Adrian?
Yes. The marketing team as well, we have put this together. We're going to summer.
Did we send this out to Andrea?
Not yet, no.
You have a way to send this to
Can
her?
you see it?
I can see it. I can see
Okay.
it.
All right.
This is utilizing you guys to help in. We are now ready to go out and seek our next sponsors for the Pulse. We currently have VCU Health System and Vonsa Course as our current sponsors, and they last year said they did not want to renew. So
They don't?
They do not. So their sponsorship actually ends at the end of June. So we worked through this. The current amount that they have is roughly $400,000, and we did use a brokerage firm to get that, who gets about 30% off the top of that. And it was a 5-year agreement. We have now taken it on in-house just after we went through it with them and realized we could do a similar effort. And therefore that 30% also stays in. The team, now our research and analysis marketing team, has gone through and looked at a lot of the rates from last time was based on projected ridership because it was done in 2015 before anything actually happened. So it's based on a study. So we looked at it from the actual ridership. So that's you see a significant increase because our ridership was more than double what was actually projected. In addition, they also did some sort of formulas looking at kind of the hits regards to other traffic, foot traffic, VDOT numbers that went down, and the downtown area, as well as the Henrico area, and that on the western end is just grown. So there's just a lot more of visuals, people who actually can see these impressions. So that's why under coming up about 800,000, as well as just the opportunities that have with the bus now having additional, more technological ability to do advertising. Also added other additional items that has also changed the ability for the sponsors to advertise within them. So 800,000 looking at, we can, you see that on the first page, there's a place to put the organization name. We are also working with the Greater Washington Partnership. They already have this package, they reviewed it. They have said it looks great, and they are also seeking on our behalf kind of that initial handshake with some of the bigger agencies in the area and trying to get us meetings set up. But you know, you guys also have lots of ideas as far as businesses that would be good sponsors for GRTC. Kind of going through. Do you want to go through it for Andreas? I'm not going through anything specific, but I can. First page, just online or have it in front of you, Andreas, is just the number. Make it into what is the Pulse, the awards, it's a bronze award, benefits that we've seen for the Pulse that actually happened and the one was designed, and then gets into the actual opportunity of the sponsorship in the space. In it, we do also mention that we will be getting articulated vehicles, which is even more space in terms of bus wrap, which is a huge opportunity, and those should be online hopefully within 2 years or so, and just give you visuals to go with it. So if you guys have any in particular you're already aware of, you can send those to maybe Joe, and we can actually come with some custom marketing material to share. Or if you want to set something up so that we can also work with GWP and pitch it. That is it.
Adrian, the only thing that wasn't clear from the presentation and documents here is, whereas I think on the existing buses, you guys do a good job of marking the green space where ads would be able to go on the bus, and I didn't see that on the I'm not going to say that word right. articulated buses. I've seen kind of markings about where
Okay,
ads could be.
If I may, the green space that you see now will be swapped out, what our plans do is to, take a organization and kind of create a mock campaign for them. So in that green box you see on the Clever Vision screen, we would create a full graphic just for some like very obvious campaign.
Yeah,
And then we would translate that onto the sides of those digital mock-ups. Here where you see like the chroma key, those are actual photographs, so we made masks essentially so that we can just easily swap in and out assets.
That's a standard bus though, right? I think you're talking about this bus, right?
I was, and I guess,
And
Yeah,
so you
to
didn't see
your
it on
point,
this one, so.
Just because that is digital, that will just be replaced in a different manner. This is just kind of a outline, if you will.
got it.
I guess he's thinking like we're basically showing all of this would be available for the sponsor.
So it sounds like if you were to go to name the company, you would in this deck have a mock-up in place of that image there rather than it would just be green space for them to visualize what they would do. You're just gonna go ahead and mock something up for them and it would go on that doc.
That's right. So if we, just as an example, if we were reapproaching VCU or health system in Bonsecourt, we would create some sort of health something or other to fill in that space so that the document feels, just has that final touch on it.
Yeah.
That feels like it's customized and specifically made for them.
Got it.
Specifically tailored to whatever company we are approaching.
Okay.
I have a question. One of the things I know it came up previously was the what type of ads are we going to allow or not allow? Meaning like betting sites, alcohol, or other types of could be seen as for some people might have a concern of that being driven through certain neighborhoods, et cetera. And so just want to make sure that I was elevating that point of what are we going to include, what are we not going to include in advertising options?
You mean as far as approaching certain vendors or as far as what the vendor would come up?
Well,
Like
so
the morality kind of question, like, are we going to allow like gambling and alcohol related or drinking related images being put on our buses that could drive around schools or drive in neighborhoods that people might be, attracted to doing those types of behaviors and people have a problem with it. So that was an issue last time, 2 years ago. I heard from some emails of people saying with the casino project coming on, do we want to have a casino posting ads on our buses? Is there any process for how we approve or disapprove certain types of ads?
So there's a couple of parallel efforts going on. So this one is first, which is just the full sponsor, and it would be a specific contract, and most
Okay.
likely different logos. If they had some sort of taglines or material like that, and it would still have to be approved. What you're speaking of is our advertising policy, which we went through the white coat concerns, and that is actually being worked on now, and it will go to the finance committee in April, and hopefully there'll be a recommendation that comes from that will go to the board in April. So the goal is
Understood.
up and running by July.
Okay, perfect. I appreciate that. Sounds good.
Yes. And a big reason for that was we were waiting for that lawsuit to end before that moves forward. So I am working on that policy with Bonnie.
and you said this was previously at 400,000?
Yes.
So, do we know if VCU is thinking about staying in on the other side with the $1 million a year on free fare? I'm just trying to figure out if we're gonna have to offset more than, not that you can get more for advertising than the advertising's worth, because the market's gonna dictate in the end whether we get 800,000 or not. But I'm just trying to understand that. Do we know if VCU is gonna stay in on that?
We were meeting with VCU on Monday, and that's kind of a quarterly meetings. Initial conversations, they said that they were working on a new grant contract, so we will go over that with them, what that may mean. I think we're thinking positive.
These are gonna be targeted by us to them. We're not gonna if they come to us to take this bid and it's say it was a casino, would we, even if they didn't put all their logos and everything on it, if they put Casino One or whatever on everything, is that, I mean, I don't know that that's probably,
I think that still, like, to Andreas's point, even though that is a parallel effort, still has to fit within what we would accept as representing our brand. So like I said, that should hopefully come to the April board, which this probably wouldn't be in place until the end of the year anyway. I mean, as far as getting everything, because all the buses would have to be wrapped and the logo would have to be set up and all of that. So hopefully that will be done. So it will at least be in line with whatever the board approves in terms of policy.
and do they have to pay the 800,000 plus the cost of the wraps?
No,
Or
that's included in it.
that's included. So what's our cost on the 800,000 to get them up to get all the wraps and everything that we're gonna be offering them? What's our cost? Because we're not gonna net 800. We're gonna have some other number, so.
I guess we are preparing this in hopes that we can acquire this as GRTC itself ourselves, so we have 100% of the 800,000, if that's what it comes to use. Previously, we only were able to use 70% because the 30% went to the brokerage.
I get that, but I'm saying what's our cost?
What's, basically means what's the net? So, or if it's the wrap.
I understand we would get the whole 800 instead of taking 30,000 out every 100,000. So that'd be 240, it'd be what, 560 up to 8. I get that part, but what I'm trying to figure out is the
It's
cost.
probably about 3,500 of us, and there's 13
Yeah.
buses. And there's ongoing maintenance because buses get into crashes and so on and so forth, but it's no more than $50,000 a year to
Okay.
maintain.
Well, that's good. I just wanted to,
Yeah, I mean, there'll be,
you gotta know all of that when you're trying to make sure you're setting your price in the right place.
Cost of the raffle bus isn't that expensive.
Okay. So you're just looking for us to support a motion to accept the $800,000 suggestion on sponsorship to the full board, is that what you're?
this is just for
Just for
information.
information, okay, just for
Yeah.
information, okay.
And this for you guys to continue to champion out there. If you guys can think of any businesses that you think would fit,
Okay.
and we will work to actually have a conversation with them to see the kind of interest there. That's it.
Excellent.
All right, John?
All right, so we're gonna walk through January 2023 financial. So this is the 7 months cumulative, so do you have one more slide? And so right on the highlight slide here is, very similar to what we've had in the past. We have revenues that are unfavorable to budget by about 4.4 million, and that's basically due to the expenses being less than budget by about 3.1 million. On the net operating surplus, didn't change very much. It changed like $20,000 from December's numbers, because as we had shared in that meeting, on our labor, which is one of the main drivers of the favorableness, we have, if you want to put it in manufacturing terms, we have a favorable volume variance, but we're having an unfavorable rate variance. And the reason why that is because our adopted fiscal 23 budget did not have the incentive programs in there for the $2 an hour for the hours worked, as well as the retention and recruitment bonuses. So we're starting to see that in, let's go two up. That's the revenue. So one, keep going, one more, two more actually. Let's do that. Yeah. So in that, so go back. Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna be these on.
So in here, what we're seeing, in the total revenue variance, you see that it's favorable $1.66 million. So if you go to the breakout pieces, you'll see that the labor budget, the vehicle operations portion has a total favorable labor budget of $821,000, of which only $39,000 is in the actual salaries of the operators. The majority of it is captured in the fringe benefits because we have probably about 65 operators less than budget, so they're not taking pension expense and there's no expenses for medical. But the wages that we're paying them are slightly higher than what we anticipated, and we did have some favorable supervisors. So that's kind of eroding on the transportation side, and likewise on the vehicle maintenance and the vehicle that the facility maintenance, as Tony Bird has reported at the last meeting. He's only 2 headcount below his budget, so we're not really seeing any favorable labor salaries and wages, because those folks are also getting the $2 an hour incentive, as well as the shift differentials. And there's also the recruitment and retention bonuses paid to the mechanics. So all in all, it's a good thing is that maintenance is up to staff, but just to be cautious, and this is what we were talking about last time, not just in the first 6 months, favorable surplus about 2.6 million, don't double it for the back end. So with that being said, as we had been talking about through the first 6 months, we haven't been using any of our PM flex money. So now that, the staffing is coming back up in maintenance and so forth, is that for the months of February through the balance of June, I'm going to start utilizing the PM flex money, so that we'll start to see that the revenue variance will probably get a little bit smaller, and we might see the operating expense variance shrink as well, because we're starting to incur more labor costs. So all in all, we'll still be, obviously we'll still add to the surplus. I will start doing a more detailed forecast as we're getting closer to the balance of the year, but I still think we'll be in a favorable, to add to the financial contingency at the end of the year. So not really bad news there. Some other highlights in here. This budget also was just the fiscal 2023 adopted budget was basically our baseline budget. So the incremental expenditures for COVID related funded for CARES Act or ARPA fund were not included in here. In here, you'll see in the category for in the services aspect, you'll see an unfavorable variance on the total for under the other equipment and supplies and the other materials and services consumed of 279,778. That's being driven by the advertising recruiting commercials that we saw the presentation at the last month's finance. So as this was going to be ARPA funded, it was not included in the budget. So that variance is because we've incurred the expenses, but was a decision to keep the ARPA and COVID funded things separate out of the baseline budget. But that money was reimbursed, is going to be reimbursed through the ARPA. So it's, the fund position of 2.6 million is accurate because we have the expense as well as the revenue. Going forward to probably go to one more at the before the balance sheet, Joe. One more back. One more back.
One we were just on.
No, it should be one. There's 2 pages on that one, but okay. So the head count I was going through. So through the January head count, we had
Should be 2 more pages, I think,
Yeah.
the other way.
We're on the same one. Okay,
yeah,
like this.
No, the other way.
other way.
And I think it's 4 pages. No,
This is the last page I have. On
Yeah. So go to the next one and then go down.
Gotcha.
Sorry. Okay, now roll down. Okay, you're stacked. Okay, keep going down a little bit further. So in here, you can go a little further, the 3rd page. Boom. So you're right here, right there. So you see the head count here. This is what I'm talking about. You can see that the equipment and facility maintenance, they're within 2 of their budget, and we still have the large volume favorable variance in the transportation. But all in all, it's starting to, our goal, our hope is, as we talked about, is to get the training classes. So the head count variances will dissipate in transportation is our goal towards the end of the year. So overtime here is about 7-8%, as you look down a little bit further on those bar charts. But all in all, I think we're still in a good position to work within our budget. If you go to balance sheet, go 2 more. 1 more. The balance sheet here, one of the things here is you'll notice here that, so in the far right is prior years, and we had current assets of 29.9 million, we're now 30.6 million. You can see there's a strengthening of the balance sheet in the current assets, cash positions at $12.6 million. It's the first month of the quarter, so we'll be a little bit higher because we just brought in our funding from the quarter for CBTA. But receivables are high as well. So the balance sheet is in a good, strong position. Down in the other assets, restricted funds with CBTA special funds at the end of January, you see that there's $27.8 million. That's basically the money we have in the bank for our fiscal 2024 funding from CBTA. No concerns in the balance sheet. We're good and strong. Next slide. This is the cash flow projections. You can see down in the end of January, we had $9 million of operating cash. The 12 million you saw before was a combination of the operating and capital. So this is just our to make payroll and pay our vendors. February, that's pretty much our actual month end February, so it went up. We had some the state money that had reimbursements that had come in. So we're in a solid position expecting to come out of the quarter about 7.5 million. So that's strong. And then April 1st, we're going to put in another $5.4 million for our fourth quarter funding. So our next goal here is now we've kind of improved our cash flow. So now we're going to start, as we talked at the last meeting, investing the operating expenses a little more into the LGIP and other short-term investments to maximize that as well. So, last slide there. This is the CBTA. We do quarterly reports. So this contains 2 months of activity. The first line, as you can see here in the top of the receipts, 2.5 million, 2.5 million, and 3 million. The top one was received on January 9th. So that was basically the distribution from November. Very healthy. The 3.013 million, that basically represents the proceeds from the local collections for the month of November 2022. That is the highest monthly distribution since we've been involved with CBTA. And as you can see here, the investment in LGIP, over $50,000 of interest income a month. The unrealized gain losses that are unrealized, they go up and down with where the market goes. But you scroll down a little bit. So at the end of February, we have $30 million in the CBTA fund. About 22 million is currently in STIF. There's $8.7 million sitting. So I'm going to repurpose a portion of probably about $3.3 million back into STIF shortly. Leave the balance because that's going to be transferred over to operations. So pretty much we're in a good, healthy position for the core business as well as the funding from CBTA.
Any questions? Is that a question? All right. 2024 budget.
Okay, 2024 budget. So we're in just a quick update. Key date. Next Tuesday is March 14th. That is the date of the release of the February CPIU. So that, as you recall, we use the month of February as the indicator for the CPI increase for the CBTA contribution. So we'll have that finalized. Can give the update at the board meeting on the 21st as to what that is. Through from June to January was 0.97%. I had baked into our budget that we shared initially in January at about 0.5%. It was about 0.47 through December. Then January's inflation was a little bit higher. Wait and see. I don't, gas prices have been all over the place the last 30 days, and that's about 30% of CPIU. So we'll update that. We did conduct detailed departmental reviews with all the directors, and then Adrian, Cheryl, and myself all went through the budget for another high level. So we're in a good position to, at the April Board of Finance meeting, to bring probably the almost final budget to you guys to review. We'll go through more in detail to show the various assumptions that are in, and then have one path through the full board in April or May for adoption, for discussion, and then if the right record, if it is so, then for adoption.
Can I ask a question about the CPIU adjustment. So we introduced our budget this week. Based on, I think we got, so just help me understand, our number that we included for introduction should have been based off of your estimate.
Yes, I talked to Darona. Your budget was actually higher than what I put in January. So I think I shared with Darona, I said that, maybe use a 1% assumption. I told her I was putting 0.5%, but just to be cautious on that. So right now it's within, it's consistent. I think that's why we wanted to have this kind of coordination amongst the municipalities as well as us.
So we would,
You would get better, not worse, at worst case scenario, right?
Correct.
that's what I wanted to be sure of, to make sure we weren't, because what we tried to solve for last
Yeah,
year
last
was
year
not
we had a
having to
problem.
adjust our budgets after intro,
Yeah, because
or at
that
least
was-
after adoption.
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
that was gonna be my question, so. Any other questions?
So the adoption is when, April?
I mean, we could be, May.
Yeah, just to give you all time to digest that, but you probably, April, take the full board.
Get done with our internal discussions. I want to then populate the budget book and then have that disseminated. We can go through that in April and then disseminate it to the full board so everybody can go through it and have time to evaluate and ask questions and so forth. So last year we did the adoption in May. So, the board's pleasure.
We just need to make sure
We're consistent.
that we all know what that number is before, I mean, ours is April 22nd, I believe. I'm sure we're all similar in,
We can share
timeframes.
after next Tuesday.
Not that ours is gonna change tremendously, but,
You
Just-
said, I just wrote, you said, just Bill's point.
April 22nd.
You said they're gonna donate 22 million to the budget?
Uh-huh.
So what I can do is after, I can do the calculation next Tuesday after I get the CPO number and we can.
You're gonna have to
circulate it
arm wrestle
for
schools for that.
everybody.
I think they're gonna be more motivated.
Just to add to that with CBTA, that we are taking CBTA to, the TAC meeting this month, and then it will go to CBTA Finance Committee May 10th, and then to the full Finance Committee, sorry, full authority.
Any other business?
That was the only other thing I wanted to bring up.
Well, I don't know if everybody heard the discussion. So apparently Petersburg has finally realized that they need to split, and so that they can start on their grant process. And so they're calling all of us. They called me too, because they didn't like my comment in the last board meeting about Petersburg not agreeing to a ratio and having issues with that. So I told them, look, I don't want to fight over it. I just want to fix it. So will you agree to a funding formula? And I know you told them 92.8, which they're probably going to keep on fighting forever. I know they need it, but I'm personally, and I'm not the whole board, I'm okay with a 90-10 if, but not until they agree to a ratio. And that's gonna put them in a pickle before us, I think. So,
And just so those who were in the room earlier, understand, we are trying to work with the NDOT, ours as well as theirs, to come to an agreement on what the formula should be. And once we have that, if the board says, okay, go with 90-10, then we will go with 90-10. So we'll hold out for 92.8, but I will go with 90-10 this year.
well, I'm only of that mindset if it gets the other side fixed. If they want to keep arguing, then go back to 92.8, but then we aren't gonna get there. So I don't know. It's all about who needs it the most, the quickest. But, again, I'm just trying to fix it for the future. I'm not trying to fight over this year, because I think even though 92.8 would be better and is probably still low for us, I still think that if it gets a better outcome one time, then it's probably worth it.
So I think Aiden, you had talked to a Jet, they may be close to coming up with, which one or which needs, and yeah, we can get them to agree to it, we will vote.
Okay, well, that's where I'm at. I don't know where everybody else is. I did think it was interesting that they called me on my cell phone. I don't even know how they got my number. The city of Petersburg's transit system called me today.
You didn't ask them for your number.
Maybe they called me through the county and it just rang to my cell phone because it's forwarded from my county number. So, but it, I was like, okay.
When I spoke with them, they didn't,
I'm not sure they knew my name when we talked. They knew I was the one that made the statement.
We gotta get to agreement one way or the other.
Any other business?